All right, Vol fans. All right, SEC fans. Catfish here, bringing it to you live from the Volunteer Roadshow Studios in Little Rock, Arkansas. We have a special guest on the show. We've got Jason from Fanbuzz. Welcome to the Volunteer Roadshow, Jason.
Hey, Catfish. Thanks for having me, man.
So, did you survive the blizzard of 2017?
Down here in Florida, yeah, I'd say it was pretty easy for us. I had a whopping 60-degree weather was probably the chill front for me.
Well, Jason is representing Fanbuzz, and we're going to talk some UT sports, coaching situations, and recruits. And Jason, the first question I've got: what kind of breaking news as far as this coaching staff? How's it being filled, and who's filling it, and where are these guys from?
Well, so far it seems like the majority of the staff has been filled, and what's even more impressive is that Jeremy Pruitt managed to do so even before he took the podium for his introductory press conference. Tyson Helton, the younger brother of USC head coach Clay Helton, he's coming over from the Trojans. He's a former quarterback coach at USC, and he leads a pro-style offense. That's going to be something interesting to see with the Vols next year after 5 years of the whatever it was offense Butch Jones was conducting out there, the read option, shotgun, whatever that is. And the interesting tidbit also is that Tennessee already has a quarterback coach, Chris Weinke, former Heisman Trophy winner from Florida State. He, like many of these guys, has past ties with Jeremy Pruitt from Alabama. He was a former assistant there. He was a former assistant for the then, I guess, St. Louis Rams previous to the move to L.A. Or I think it was the year before they moved to L.A. and then the first year in L.A. And a former head coach at IMG Academy down here in the Tampa area, actually, which is one of the top prep schools in the nation, one of those online recruiting kids from all over the nation. All the top prospects go there. So you got a guy who has experience winning at the college level, knows the quarterback position really well. Helton as well was the quarterback coach with T. Martin, co-offensive coordinator there as well, or helped out with the offense there as well, coaching Sam Darnold, who many believe is going to be a top pick in the NFL draft should he come out this year or next year. So that's two guys to get Tennessee fans excited. Will Friend on the offensive line. He's a former offensive coordinator at Colorado State. He'll be a co-OC as well. He coached at Georgia with Pruitt and Mike Bobo, the head coach there now at Colorado State. So a lot of familial ties to the SEC. The big thing is keeping Robert Gillespie. I know that that's somebody that Tennessee fans, let's be honest, like when things were going bad, everybody wanted Butch Jones, Larry Scott, and, Bob Shoop all gone. Like there wasn't many ties that you could really say were positives. And Robert Gillespie was the one real bright spot for Tennessee this year. You saw John Kelly, you saw Ty Chandler. Basically every running back looked great during the last few seasons. And, Robert Gillespie, credit to him. We talked about it before the show that I think the one name that would have floated out there would have been former Tennessee player Jay Graham, but he's followed Jimbo Fisher from Florida State to Texas A&M. And, so the other positions that I know have been filled so far, co-DC, Kevin Schurer, he coached outside linebackers at Georgia this year. We've seen how incredible Georgia's linebackers specifically and the defense has been throughout the season. And throughout his tenure, he's been there since 2014. So he knows Pruitt. They coached together before Pruitt came back to Alabama. And he also worked as an assistant defensive coach there when Pruitt was the DB coach at Bama during his first tenure as a coach, not counting the GA position. Speculation that Tracy Rocker and Lance Thompson, who has basically been a linebackers coach everywhere in the SEC. Most recently, assistant head coach in South Carolina, but coached linebackers at Auburn, Alabama, and, of course, at Tennessee with both Kiffin and Derek Dooley. And Terry Fair's the big name coming back. Started out as grad assistant, former Tennessee defensive back, who has gained some experience coaching DBs at Colorado State. That's the position he'll take on now. And, so basically the majority of the staff has already been filled. It's only been about a week for Jeremy Pruitt on the job, and he's hitting the ground running. I know that the big thing is him going back to Alabama and coaching the Tide in the bowl game, in the college football playoff game, and whether that'll be a good or bad thing for Tennessee. But so far, he really emphasized during his press conference that hard work hit the ground running, and he's done that.
Well, there's actually some news breaking before the press conference was announced that he had hired a couple of, I believe Terry Fair was one of them. So it sounds like he's ready to work. He's bringing his lunch pail, working overtime. And what does that leave us as far as any open positions that he needs to fill? And are there any names for him out there?
Yeah, like I said, the defensive line and linebackers coach are up for speculation right now. Nothing was really confirmed. I know they were reporting Tracy Rocker with Sure, and Chris Rumpf, if I didn't mention him before, he's coming over from Florida. He's another guy who coached with Pruitt at Alabama. But the wide receiver position still up for grabs, and the tight end position. I know Peerless Price, who's one of the more beloved ex-Tennessee players, key contributor on that '98 BCS team. He's retweeting fans saying that they want Peerless Price to be the wide receivers coach at UT. I don't know if that means he's really campaigning for the job or he just likes attention. I don't know what Peerless Price did after his NFL career as far as coaching goes, but he is a guy that obviously would, be a familiar name in the SEC in the Southeast, especially. As a younger guy, I could see him doing well at that position. He knew the wide receiver position well enough to win a national championship and become an NFL receiver. So that's, pretty much but there's some names getting thrown out. Tight ends position, it's still speculation at this point, but to me, it's just impressive that Jeremy Pruitt has the majority of his staff already decided, especially when he is balancing time between coaching Tennessee and coaching as an assistant at Alabama.
I think one of the most intriguing of all the hires he's made so far, to me anyway, and I'm just a truck driver, but Chris Weinke. When I heard that, I'm like, can you kind of reiterate what is his ties with Pruitt? Does he have any ties at all, or how did
he worked as an offensive analyst at Alabama, so I guess that's the real ties that he has to Jeremy Pruitt. But I think it's more so, the name speaks for itself. He's a guy who is a two-sport athlete, played baseball, dominated college football. Was a guy Tennessee fans should be familiar with as far as that late 90s run against FSU in the national championship, and won a Heisman Trophy. At who better to coach the college quarterback position than a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback? And then, like I said, the NFL ties, the high school ties. That actually, I think, might be an underrated fact that he coached at IMG, which is a hotbed for recruiting prospects, especially in the Florida area, especially kids that are willing to go outside of the confines of their own state and play for a team like IMG in a different state. Maybe you won't necessarily have to be a South Carolina kid going to USC or Clemson. Maybe you won't necessarily have to be a kid from Gainesville who wants to go to UF. You are willing to go out of those state lines. So a guy with that tie and that background should be able to, I would say, relate to top prospects and be a solid recruiter at least.
Well, you bring up Florida, and that, Florida is such a hotbed for recruiting. I mean, so many athletes come from down there. Let's switch gears and go into recruiting. Let's start off with the decommitments that we've had lately. Can you give us any more news on that? Do we have any more players on the fence? Who are we trying to retain? Why did they leave?
I mean, that's what's going to happen with a lot of coaching searches and a lot of just coaching turnover in general. Butch Jones, to his credit, people want to say was a masterful recruiter and a player's coach. It seems like toward the end, the culture changed there. A lot more players were coming out and saying negative things. But to his credit, up until that point, it seemed like a lot of recruits did like him and did buy into what he was preaching, the whole brick by brick thing. So, of course, there are going to be some prospects who committed to Tennessee that are going to change their minds. The big one is obviously Cade Mays from Knoxville, a 5-star prospect, offensive lineman, whose father played at Tennessee, who's from the Knoxville area, Knoxville Catholic. His teammate was one of Butch Jones's sons. So he obviously had a close relationship with Jones and that coaching staff. And I think toward the end, he decommitted before Butch Jones' departure. It's basically, he said flat out, I want to win. So he's looking at Clemson. He's looking at Georgia. Basically those run-of-the-mill teams. I think Ohio State's in the running as well. I know Clemson and Georgia are the big two, and one of those, out of the southeastern teams, I think it is Ohio State. But I don't. I think at this point it may be too late to get him back. But as far as a realistic option, four-star quarterback Adrian Martinez from California, he met with Jeremy Pruitt and Helton this week for an in-home visit. And according to VolQuest, the big thing out of that was that they basically said that their offense was going to be pro style. So that is definitely a change. He's a mobile quarterback. It'll be interesting to see if he's a better fit maybe for Tennessee's previous offense. But the other big thing is also that they said as a true freshman, he'll have the opportunity to start. So nothing's guaranteed. I know, like, I would personally think the favorite would be Jerry Garantano or Quentin Dormady to reclaim the position. They both started, maybe even the freshman from this past year. But I would still think it would be Garantano's to lose, if anything else. And, maybe that's a recruiting pitch. Maybe that's something to, like, keep Martinez's interest. But it's definitely worth noting. And, with the new coaching staff, that could be it. Maybe Jeremy Pruitt sees something in him that he doesn't see in the guys he has already.
Yeah. Well, I read something last night that said that our recruiting class had an average ranking of around 30th. Do you see that improving much, or are there anybody out there we're trying to get?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like I said, it's going to be tough in the early weeks, especially with this. Like, it took Tennessee nearly a month to find a new head coach, and I think that was kind of why many expected them to jump on that whole recruiting or the coaching, the whole coaching search early to get that early signing period, like get some more guys in out of the way. But I do think Jeremy Pruitt is somebody that's going to help them because he is Alabama's ace recruiter. I don't necessarily think that a lot of kids are going to be specifically committing. Like, that wasn't my initial thought until I heard some ex-players say that he was the primary reason, like Derrick Henry, like Jalen Ramsey at Florida State. Like Jonathan Allen also said, even as an Alabama guy, Tennessee's now his second favorite team because he was so close to Jeremy Pruitt as a defensive player. So I do think there's a better shot. I, however, think the bigger thing is maybe salvaging that class and getting some of those decommitments back that Tennessee did have. One of the guys in particular, though, that wasn't necessarily maybe giving Tennessee as big of a shot until the hire was J.J. Peterson, a four-star linebacker who's narrowed down his choices. His top two are Alabama and Auburn. And I know that he did a podcast on 24/7 Sports that was released after Pruitt was hired, but was recorded like days before when it was just speculation that he was the favorite to land the Tennessee job. And he said that would make things a lot less likely for Alabama and would make Tennessee one of his favorite choices because he was that close with Jeremy Pruitt. It was Jeremy Pruitt recruiting him and him having that relationship with him and Nick Saban really answering just basic questions. So he didn't have as much of a relationship with Saban up until that point. Maybe that'll change closer to signing day. I think Saban is more of the closer as far as Alabama goes because that sells itself. I'm Nick Saban. Here's my championship rings. Come play for the Tide. I put 60-plus players in the NFL over the last decade, stuff like that. So I do think things are going to change. I don't think Tennessee is going to end with a 39 overall ranking. I think that's what I read it was today. And like 12th or something in the SEC, or maybe last in the SEC right now. But the thing is, like, there's a lot of time left. There's 2 months left, and a lot of the bigger prospects want to milk this as much as they can. It's basically free agency for them, and it's the first real glimpse of attention that they're going to get on a national scale. If you were a 4- or 5-star prospect, would you not want to do the cool hat thing on ESPN? Would you not want to be like, oh, here's my unique way that's going to go viral on like social media or YouTube or something like that? So that's really why Alabama has kind of teetered around like 10th or so this whole year because all the Saban kids are going to commit toward the end of the year. But I think for Tennessee, it's better that they got their guy instead of rushing in just for recruiting. Obviously, recruiting is a must, but there is talent there. There is going to be a little bit of turnover that people aren't necessarily giving them credit for because last year was so bad. But I think with the right coach and the right system, we're going to see some quick improvements, and it'll be better if they can land some of those top prospects to salvage this class.
Well, answer something for me. In the press conference, Pruitt said that he was going to be working for Tennessee, and then during the dead period, he was going to go back to the team, the kids that he committed to. He went into their living rooms and he wanted to keep a commitment. What is going on as far as what Pruitt's doing? What do you see his schedule like throughout the rest of the season? And when do you think he'll be back here permanently? And where's he at right now?
So I know that I think it's this week is the big recruiting week for Tennessee. So they're going to need their head coach. And my assumption is that he's going to be in Knoxville this week hosting the uncommitted kids or the prospects that are in town. I know for a lot of kids or a lot of prospects that they've already used their official visits. So recruiting's wrapping up. At this point, you kind of have to have a good idea of the teams that you're looking into. So if you're a Tennessee kid, you're going to want to look in and meet the new coach, and he's going to have to be there this week. However, after that, there's kind of a dead period in between until the end of December. There's that early signing period for early enrollees. And like I said, there's going to be a lot of kids that don't take advantage of that, but there will be, usually every team has at least 6 to a dozen or so guys who will try to enroll early, who finish school early and try to compete for a starting job as true freshmen. For me, I think it's kind of 50-50. It's obviously admirable that he wants to, finish out what he started at Alabama, especially as an alum. Like, he's an Alabama guy. He's spent his career at Alabama as a player, and he started his career at Alabama as a coach, as a GA. He's worked his way up the ladder, and he only has a head coaching position because of the experiences he had so far. So keeping his word is an admirable thing to do. Plus, it is a chance to play in the national championship. And I think where it benefits Tennessee is that, I know down here people brought up Scott Frost at UCF. And there's some UCF fans that are, they're happy about it. They obviously stand a better chance with Scott Frost coaching against Auburn, which I still think is going to be a tough game for them either way. But, with Scott Frost coaching, you get that same team that you had all year. And at the same time, I know that Nebraska's made no secret about it, that they think their coach being on a nationally televised game against an SEC powerhouse team, or at least a top 2-3 SEC team right now, is good exposure for the Cornhuskers. And with Tennessee, you don't have a bowl game. You don't have that exposure this year that you can get an extra advantage for recruits. Jeremy Pruitt's going to be shown twice as much now that he's Tennessee head coach Jeremy Pruitt, that he's like the guy who's going to be leading a rival SEC team. They're going to be showing him that much. Like, how like Lane Kiffin was, because he was Lane Kiffin, they'd show him every other play on the Alabama sideline. Yeah. If it's some no-name coordinator, maybe not. But if it's the guy who's going to be Tennessee's next head coach, they're going to show him every time, good or bad, a defensive stop happens or a defensive play. So I think that, in a way does help Tennessee, especially if there's this dead period. There's really nothing you can do. It's just kind of getting acclimated with Knoxville, I would guess. And I'm sure at this point he's gotten used to it. He knows where the buildings are around campus. He knows where his office is. He knows how to get to Neyland Stadium. So I don't see any problem with it.
Well, I don't know what you want for Christmas, but what I want for Christmas is for Jeremy Pruitt to be the first Saban assistant to beat him. And right. I hope he starts this next year. And before we let you go, you come here courtesy of Fanbuzz. Kind of tell the viewers what Fanbuzz is and how they can find you and what all y'all are up to down there.
Well, fanbuzz.com, we're a Cox Media Group website. We have freelancers and full-time guys. I myself am full-time. I went to the University of Tennessee, so they know that that's my specialty, I guess. But we basically cover everything possible. We cover college football, NFL, pro wrestling, NBA, college basketball sometimes, anything that will pique fan interest. So our Tennessee page, you can look us up. Let's look up Tennessee Fanbuzz page, and that's where a lot of our viewership comes from for the Tennessee fan base. My Twitter handle is Jason Hall 1289, and obviously you can follow them as well. Fanbuzz is the Twitter handle. Fanbuzz.com is the website.
Well, we sure do appreciate you coming on the show. I'm going to put all the links in the description, and thanks for tuning in. Go Vols. We're going 15-0. I promise you that. All right?